Welcome back to Things You Don't Know, because the past is stranger than you think. I'm Dr. Sean Deneen.
And hey, I'm Dr. William Weaver. The world is filled with weird, and we want to find it with you. Today, we're traveling far beyond the headlines, past the missile tests, past the parades, and even past the caricatures. We're diving into the psychological landscape of North Korea, and we're doing it through the lens, at first at least, of B.R. Myers' razor-sharp and controversial book, quote, The Cleanest Race, How North Koreans See Themselves and Why It Matters.
This book is brilliantly written, folks, but it flips the usual analysis on its head. We're not talking about one of the last Marxist-Leninist dictatorships. Myers argues that the true ideological heartbeat of North Korea isn't communism at all. It's an adaptation of Japanese ideas, something older, something mythic, something definitely racial, some might say weird.
And, should we say maternal?
Yes, that word maternal is the key. At the heart of the North Korean worldview, Meyer says, is the idea, and I'm going to come back to this many times, that the Korean people are childlike, innocent, pure, emotionally vulnerable, and they need to be protected by a stern but loving mother. That mother figure is not a person, it's the party and the nation.
Which means the leader, whether Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, or Kim Jong-un, doesn't represent a cold father or military strongman, but a kind of surrogate mother or fiercely protective nanny. The propaganda isn't Stalinist steel. It's doting, it's watchful, and yes, it's paranoid.
Exactly. Myers argues in some depth that North Korean ideology isn't class based like Orthodox communism. It's race based, ethno nationalist, and almost fascistic. But here's the twist, it's presented in an infantile, sentimental package. The core idea of North Korean ideology is the Koreans are the cleanest, the purest, the most innocent race on earth, so easily taken advantage of, hence the title, The Cleanest Race.
And how do they see the outside world? Well, to them, it's dirty, it's corrupt, it's full of wolves. America is the worst, a beastly, predatory force in their imagination. Japan is sneaky, a scar of colonial shame. South Korea is degenerate, seduced by consumerism, and the West.
This worldview shows up everywhere in their propaganda, in posters, cartoons, novels, even children's books. Their most famous propaganda is a group called Squirrel and Hedgehog. Think of Bugs Bunny as a military warrior. You'll see weeping Korean girls, helpless villagers, ravaged peasants, and then boom! The glorious Korean soldier appears, not as a conqueror, but as a protector, a shepherd with a gun.
And it's racialized. Myers claims that these portrayals owe more to 1930s Japanese fascist propaganda, ironically, than to Soviet or Chinese models. The obsession with racial purity, with emotional suffering, with the mother-child bond between citizen and state. It's all there.
It's an adaptation of Japanese ideas. See our Lost Warriors podcast for more about that. But there's a reason why North Korean propaganda doesn't show workers building a utopia like in Soviet posters. Instead, you see suffering children, hostile foreigners, and tearful reunions. The message isn't you are strong, what can you accomplish? It's learned helplessness. It's you are vulnerable. We alone will protect and love you.
And that, Dr. Deneen, is why Myers says Western analysts keep getting North Korea wrong. We expect them to be rational state actors, guided by self interest and ideology, but that's not how they see themselves.
No, they see themselves as chosen, not just the victims of history, but as I said, the only morally clean people in a filthy world. That's why compromise looks like betrayal to them. Defense looks like destiny, and why defiance feels like love.
Love wrapped in barbed wire.
Yes, that maternal warmth guarded by missiles and prison camps.
We should also say this book has critics. Some say Myers overstates the case, ignores the real influence of Junshat, which is what the Kim family calls their ideology, and cherry picks examples. But even if he's only partly right, his thesis forces us to reconsider what we think we know. Yeah, the idea that Kim Il sung and later Kim Jong il are not portrayed as distant patriarchs or rigid generals, but as tender, all caring mother figures. Think about that. We in the West keep looking for the strongman model, Mussolini, Stalin, even Mao. But North Korea's iconography doesn't show the leader commanding as much as caring.
Exactly. In murals, Kim Il sung is often surrounded by smiling children, comforting grieving women, tucking in sick soldiers, helping peasants plant crops. You don't see him wielding a weapon. You don't see him giving lectures. You see him cradling a baby. Myers calls this the maternal parent model, and it's striking on how consistent it is across the decades.
And there's this deep sense of intimacy, not just reverence, but emotional dependence. In the stories and films of Korean people are weak, innocent, and easily traumatized. They need someone who doesn't just lead them, but loves them fiercely, possessively, unconditionally.
Think of it like this: the Kim family is the mother you never wean from. He is always watching, always nurturing, always nourishing and protecting from imperialists, from enemies, from even from your own despair. That's why betrayal is so unforgivable. To betray the leader isn't political treason, it's emotional abandonment. It's like spitting in your mother's face.
This framework creates obedience not through fear, but through guilt and love. The posters don't say, do this or you'll die. They say, don't disappoint the one who suffered for you.
And that suffering is emphasized constantly. The leader is said to be in pain because of what the people are suffering. He can't sleep. He can't eat. He visits orphans in the snow. He cries when he sees the wounded. He sings lullabies. It's almost Marian, like the Catholic image of the sorrowful Virgin Mother.
That just seems so auteur to us. And kind of is because I don't believe any of those things are true. They're just perhaps manufactured for people, except it's fused with militarism. So you get this strange hybrid maternal protection delivered by tanks, warmth through authoritarianism. Myers calls it soft fascism, but it's probably better understood as a family dictatorship with the leader as the holy mother and the people as her perpetually endangered children.
It's also why transitions of power within the Kim dynasty always have to stay within the family. You don't elect your mother. You don't debate her. You're born to her. You belong to her. You trust her absolutely. That logic makes sense to a North Korean citizen the way a parliamentary democracy, with all its ambiguity and choice, never could.
It's deeply affective, deeply manipulative, and undeniably effective. Think about how that affects defectors, people who flee the country only to find themselves racked with guilt. They haven't just left a regime, they've left their mommy.
And the propaganda certainly plays on that too. The returning defector who weeps and begs forgiveness is not punished. not sent to a prison camp, but welcomed back, at least in theory. The re education scenes feel more like emotional reunions than Stalinist political confessions. This is not Orwell. It's more like Hans Christian Andersen rewritten for a totalitarian state.
One of the most haunting passages in The Cleanest Race is where Myers describes how the regime cultivates a sense of purity and dirtiness. The Korean people, he says, are pure, clean, childlike. The outside world is defiled. The leader protects the purity the way a mother shields her baby from the cold.
But that purity is fragile because the enemies are strong, which is why everything always feels so anxious, why the regime must constantly patrol, censor, interrogate, ban, and correct. A good mother never stops worrying for her children, so the Kim regime never stops surveilling
It's like a maternal gaze that never blinks.
and will never let go and never let the child grow up. So if you're still wondering whether we're exaggerating the maternal symbolism in North Korean ideology, let's talk about the country's most popular song.
Not just any song. Arguably, the most famous and emotionally loaded song in North Korea. Title: We Cannot Live Away from His Breast.
That title alone, it stops you cold. A man talking about breasts, not his rule, not his vision, not his wisdom, not his strength. No, his breast, the place where a child nestles, where an infant is nourished, the place of warmth, milk, tears, and forgiving love.
In the West, we would never dream of describing a male leader this way, at least not in an open sense. Even our most beloved presidents are remembered for their ideas or their actions. But Kim Il sung, he's remembered like a nursing mother, the source of life itself.
The lyrics speak of longing, not political loyalty, but physical, emotional need. The people sing about how they cannot live without him. This is not metaphorical, friends, literally. They say their hearts would stop if they were separated from his embrace.
And here's what Myers points out: this isn't just poetry, it's policy. It's propaganda, too. The regime intentionally fosters dependency. It doesn't want self reliant citizens. It wants infants in a crib, watched over by the supreme mother leader.
Imagine growing up with that song as your national lullaby. Imagine singing it in school assemblies and parade on state television. You are being taught over and over and over that your life force comes not from yourself, not from your ability, your family, or anything you do, but from your proximity to this one man's body, his chest, his warmth, his semi orgasmic love.
And remember, this was about Kim Il sung, but it got passed on to Kim Jong il and now to Kim Jong un. The breast is hereditary. The emotional bond isn't broken when the leader dies, it's transferred. It's sort of like a maternal spirit.
This is what makes North Korea unique. It's not just a totalitarian state, it's a psycho emotional system designed to regress the population into a childlike state and then bind them forever to a mythical caregiver. The propaganda isn't there to convince, it's there to soothe.
And to guilt, because once the leader is your mother figure, leaving the regime doesn't feel like a political choice. It feels like abandonment, like being a bad child, a traitor to the breast that fed you.
In fact, North Korean defectors often say that the hardest part of leaving their homeland wasn't the fear, it was the guilt, the loneliness, the fear that the Kims could read their minds, and the spiritual pain of living without the leader's warmth.
And that's how deep it goes. It's not just ideology, it's attachment theory, weaponized.
We cannot live away from his breast. It is more than a song. It's the country's national mirror, and what it reflects is a nation of children held close but never allowed to grow up. If you're born in North Korea, you're not just entering a country, you are being born into a family with one mother at the center, the supreme leader.
From the moment the baby opens its eyes, portraits of Kim Il sung and Kim Jong il are on the walls. Literally, every home is required to display them, cleaned daily. Hey, this is really weird. Cleaned daily with a cloth kept separate from anything else in the house. It's not just politics. It's not just propaganda. They have elevated it to ritual.
And they take this very seriously, friends. People have burned themselves to death when house is on fire because they couldn't save the portraits rather than risk being imprisoned. When a child learns to speak, they just don't say mama and papa. They are taught to speak of the general, the great leader, the dear leader, and the dear successor, the fatherly leader, as the young Kim is called now, with awe, with affection, even with tears. It's the first emotional story a child hears. They are helpless forever, and the leader is their eternal breast.
In school, this intensifies. Songs like We Cannot Live Away from His Breast are part of daily assemblies. Students write essays about how they dream of dying for the leader. They role play rescues in which Kim Jong il saves them from fire, war, and starvation.
And this continues into adolescence. The Kim figure remains ever present, ever loving, ever sacrificial. His pain is your purpose. If you fail a test, you are told you have disappointed the leader. If you succeed, you are told he wept with joy. Teenagers ask not their family's permission, but the permission of their party leaders in the portraits as to whether they can date or not.
As you grow into adulthood, whether you work on a collective farm, in a factory, or even in the military, the leader is still your parent. He's described in state publications as walking through snow to deliver grain, skipping meals so the army can eat, staying awake night after night in worry for the people.
This isn't leadership, it's martyrdom. And like any mother, he asks for nothing except your life, your heart, and your unwavering devotion forever.
And so it makes sense that even in old age, this relationship doesn't break. In fact, for the elderly, the regime becomes even more maternal. Retired workers are shown weeping with gratitude because the party gave them warm socks, or a birthday cake, or a photo of Kim Il sung.
There are stories, many of them, of elderly citizens asking to be buried with the great leader's portrait. They whisper to the portrait on their deathbeds, and this has been recorded. We're not making this up. They apologize for having lived long enough to be a burden, but they trust the party, despite being official atheists, like a mother will care for them even in the next life.
And even death is not an escape. In cemeteries, the language of tombstones refers to loyal sons and daughters of the nation. Defectors report dreams, nightmares really, where the leader appears scolding them or forgiving them like a grieving parent.
Let's make it very clear. This cult is not something external. It's totally internalized. It replaces your actual mother. It rewrites your emotional life. It governs your joy, your sorrow, your guilt, and your sense of safety.
Myers calls it infantilization as ideology. But we might go one step further and say it's orphan proofing. The regime becomes your only mother and makes sure you never forget how cold the world could be without her arms or his arms around you.
And here's the worst cruelty, friends. This regime does not nourish you like a mother. The state does not feed every child. There have been several famines where millions have starved to death. It does not prevent every famine, every accident, every economic collapse. But it convinces you all the same that you owe it everything, your milk drunk loyalty.
For decades, the state told you that the leader was your mother, that his breast sustained you, that your life had no meaning without him. And then one day, you cross the border, and that entire system evaporates.
You should feel free. You can work, you can vote, you have a new life. But instead, you just feel abandoned.
Defectors often report symptoms that sound less like post authoritarian trauma and more like orphan grief, depression, guilt, emotional confusion. You left a country, yes, but more than that, you left a relationship.
One woman who escaped the Seoul described her first year in South Korea as being ripped from a warm womb and left on cold tile. Another said, I didn't want to go back, but I missed the feeling of being watched, of being protected. It felt like someone loved me.
That line chills me. Not controlled, not oppressed, but loved. Boy, if that's love, it's not a love that I want.
Or me either, Dr. Weaver, certainly not. But we've said this before. North Korea doesn't raise citizens, it raises children, forever children. And when those children defect, they don't become adults overnight. They become parentless.
Even religion isn't always a clean replacement. Christian missions in South Korea, while helpful to many defectors, sometimes struggle to fill that emotional vacuum. Why? Because the state didn't just give moral guidance, it gave emotional totality.
Imagine being told that every joy you ever had was thanks to Kim Il sung. Every test you passed, every illness you survived, every birthday cake, every orgasm if you were married and having sex with your spouse. But then imagine being told, or worse, figuring it out, that that was all a lie.
Yeah, that's not liberation, that's emotional demolition.
And some just can't bear it. There are documented cases, about 30% according to Myers, of defectors attempting to return, even bribing border guards to allow them back in, not because they believe in Juche or communism, but because the loneliness of freedom and the fear of responsibility was more painful than the comfort of control, however harsh.
And we shouldn't mock that because we're not talking about weak people. We're talking about people who spent their whole lives being loved by a ghost.
North Korean propaganda didn't just lie. As I said before, it parented, it wrapped yourself around your childhood, your tears, your imagination. It told you you were loved. It told you who to love. And it made sure that leaving meant heartbreak.
So, Dr. Deneen, what does this interesting book have to say about the mystical or magical powers of the dear leaders? I've heard they believe he invented many different things that clearly were invented by others.
Yes, indeed. There are so many, it would do a podcast itself to list them all. But we should mention only a few things any one of the Kims is said to either have created or have the ability to do. They created sneakers, hamburgers, and my favorite drink of all time, lime Coke, as well as not needing to use the bathroom, being able to fly, and hang on to your hats, folks, even having the ability to raise the dead. Now, why did this leader, assuming he really had done this, do these things? Because workers need comfortable footwear and a very high calorie, high energy food and drink to survive 10-hour factory shifts. The question is, do people truly believe these outlandish claims? Some accept them out of fear, since there is what they call generational guilt for traitors. Up to 3 generations of a family of a traitor can be put in prison camps. Even infants are put in there sometimes. Others believe simply because they've been told and retold the same lies and the same tales for as long as they could remember.
What you are describing is very typical of authoritarian regimes. In analytic terms, it is called the big lie. Hitler described this in detail in Mein Kampf. For more detailed analysis, check out the J6 Insurrection podcast. What is startling is that this tactic has actually been replicated in the USA by various politicians. For example, check out the 30,000, yes, 30,000 major lies Trump propounded in its first term and the effect this has had on American politics, for example. Look, we can go on, but I suggest people get out their, quote, intellectual shovels and look carefully at the things they uncover. This is a very dangerous propaganda tactic, and it's been followed with disastrous results by many people like Hitler, Mussolini, Idi Amin. I mean, the list goes on and on. They all follow the same playbook. Well, I've found this interesting. Dr. Deneen really put this together, and it was very interesting to me. But we need to close for now. And I hope you have gotten something from it, and I hope that you'll come back soon.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Comment, leave us a like, and do come back soon. Bye bye.